I want to thank everyone for joining us for this panel on digital peace building, digital technologies and medium for peace building. I also want to remind everyone that there is a climate change panel going on downstairs. So if that's what you're looking for, you're in the wrong space. But yeah, so my name is Amanda Feldman. I am a global policy fellow at Search for Common Ground, and I'm really excited to be welcoming our esteemed group of panelists here who are going to be talking about digital peace building and some of the challenges and opportunities that it presents us on the continent. Before we begin, I wanted to start with a brief run of show. So we're going to start by giving our panelists the opportunity to give a short presentation, a little introduction into who they are, the work that they're doing. And then I'm going to open it up with some questions to begin our discussion. And then afterward, we really want to focus on Q&A. So we will be giving you all the opportunity to ask questions from them. And then also for those joining online, we will have someone who is bringing your questions up for the panelists as well. So without further ado, I'm going to give a brief introduction into our panelists. So on the far side, we have Sade Dada. Sade Dada is an attorney by training, serving as public policy manager of Anglophone West Africa and connectivity and innovation policy manager at Meta. She collaborates with stakeholders from government, civil society, academia, and industry to find solutions to complex internet policy issues facing African countries, including privacy, safety and security, freedom of expression, internet shutdowns, the impact of the internet on economic growth, and new opportunities for democratic engagement. Next to her, we have Diana Paul Chando. Diana Chando is the first Tanzanian and a young woman to serve this role of youth ambassador under the Political Affairs, Peace and Security Department. She is zealous for human rights, education, peace, and security. She is a lawyer and a sustainable development goal champion. And then to my left, we have Habibou Bako. Habibou Bako is currently in the Sahel Policy and Outreach Associate at Search for Common Ground. He's based in Bamako, Mali, and his work focuses on peace building, human security, emerging challenges in Africa, conflict sensitivity, and digital issues. And for further bios, you can see the pamphlet that we handed out at registration. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it to our panelists. We can start with Habibou for a brief introduction.
Thank you very much, Amanda. I'm really delighted to be here to discuss this topic with you. Specifically also to share some kind of work we are doing at Search for Common Ground on this thematic. As you know, one of the things that is frustrating today is that in highly affected conflict area, there is all the time reactive responses that is going on challenges that are seen clearly, but also there is a kind of lack of anticipation on emergent challenges also. So as you know, the Sahel countries are one of the areas that are now growing and getting access to digital tools and digitalization. So the work we are doing is also how to mitigate this access to this digital space amidst a context that is really affected by conflicts, mitigating challenges like misinformation, to make sure also people are getting safely in the digital space. So there is what I can say.
Thank you, Habibou.
Hello, everyone. My name is Chando, as clearly explained before, and I'm so glad to be in this panel because to be the first young person to serve this role in the African Union was during the most difficult time in Addis. I remember I was called for the interview It was during the time that the media propaganda was so bad about how Ethiopia is really affected by what's going on there. So coming back from a family of raised by a mom who is so concerned, how mothers can be, she was like, you can't go there. I can't literally go to a space where when I look on Google or CNN or BBC, I see a lot happening. And one thing about me is I'm a daring person. My friends always say I'm a go-getter. I always have to get it. So I remember I went to Addis as soon as I landed. What I saw was different from what was portrayed on the media. And that's how I got to understand the power of media in the entire world is really big. It really affects what we see. So I would really want to say, unless you have facts about what's going on, share it. You don't know how much a lot of young people are looking up to social media, CNN, BBC, how much they read. You may be getting your money, your views, but you may be killing the generation in their dreams. So I'm glad to be on this panel because I'm really moved by this conversation. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Again, I'm Sade Dada. Thank you for that warm introduction, Amanda. And it's a pleasure to serve on this panel with colleagues, Diana and Habibou. One of the things that a lot of folks do not realize is that a company like Meta, which is formerly Facebook, if you all are not aware, is proactively involved with organizations like Search for Common Good to combat some of the challenges faced on our continent of Africa. And we are much more than what you see on WhatsApp, social media accounts like Facebook and Instagram. And so I'm really excited that we were invited to participate in this conversation about how we can use digital tools to be a source for peace building on the continent. At Meta, we're involved in an enormous amount of projects with CSOs that are geared towards promoting peace and preventing conflicts in our own little way. We have partnered with Search for Common Good on a number of projects, one in particular that I hope we'll have some chance to discuss here today is the Uthabiti project, Uthabiti Africa, which is a resiliency initiative where we've trained over 60 CSOs in collaboration with Search for Common Good and other partners on the ground. In addition to those types of initiatives, we're also involved in a great number of digital literacy efforts that are geared towards allowing people to understand how to use our platforms safely and have a responsible online presence. And so what you said, Diana, really resonated with me about misinformation and the sort of things that we do sometimes see online. We are proactive about using the resources that we have to help prevent that and also train folks on safe and responsible use of online platforms. I hope that we'll have some chance later to get into more detail about the proactive steps that we are taking as Meta, but also the collaborations and opportunities that we have to be able to progress that work with some of the folks in the room.
Thank you all for those introductions. So I want to get us started with Habibou again, talking from a CSO. Let me move this closer. Talking from a CSO perspective, I think all the panelists are representing quite different sectors, and so I think it would be helpful for you to speak both to the potential challenges and harms that are coming out of digital technology, but also the opportunities for peace, as we've mentioned. So if you could speak to your experience in the region, especially coming from Bamako, Mali, about the landscape that youth, but all internet users and social media users are facing.
Thank you again, Amanda. So maybe just before I start, it is my word, but also that's come out during like the meetings we have in what we call the Forum for Online Space, Forum for a Safe Online Space in Sahel and West Africa. That's bring together civil society organization, researchers, young people, as well as decision makers also. We work together closely to make sure the challenges identification as well as the opportunity, how to capitalize opportunity also is well well commonly understood, as well as also the initiative she mentioned. That is also one of the points in collaboration between Search for Common Ground and Meta on the on how to build also resiliency, how to build community resilience during and on like these challenges. That's maybe I will just talk about 2 or 3 quickly. The first one is the fact that communities are missing the opportunity that the online space gives. Instead of connecting people, it's become something also that the harm speech is very is a lot within community, within generation. This morning, Dr. Rook talked about like the opportunity to bring generation, but also between a clash between generations. So it is becoming like a place people are not using the opportunity to stay together, but to making more along the bridge also. The other point is the spread also of misinformation and fake news. People have rights to know what is going on political side. People are the right to understand more what is going on specifically in conflict zone, for example, what is going on during military operations, what is going on everywhere, but there is a lot of fake news that are spreading, and that make it very difficult for communities. So this is the maybe main challenges that are seen, but in terms of opportunity also, we cannot say that there is no entry points. I will just talking about the forum I am coordinating, the Forum for a Safe Online Space and the Equality Initiative also with Meta. There is people that want to advance things, that want to mitigate these challenges, to take the opportunity that's given to bring together several generations, to bring together someone who is living in northern Mali, in Kidam, for example, and someone who is living in Bamako or in the diaspora. So like sliding the geographical distance, as well as also opportunity, for example, for people to learn, or to people to get connected to a global community, and size the opportunity that these digital tools give them. So this is what I can say at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Habibou. And kind of moving on from that, Diana, if you could speak to some of the priorities that you're seeing from your work in the Peace Ambassadors for the African Union, and responding to some of the challenges that Habibou has highlighted, and also speak to some of the broader work with regard to digital peace building.
As I would speak as the whole problem of white copy, what we really prioritize when it comes to media. So we have had several trainings. I'll give one example. We once held sessions for a week in Uganda, where we brought about a lot of media influencers. When I say media influencers, I mean people who have like really like a lot of followers, because we believe that the ones who get the most attention when they post something. And we had an interaction with them where they were trained about peace. They were trained about to technology, how it can be a tool of peace, and they were trained about conflict management in general. And that training brought about something called combat hate speech, which we developed like hashtags where we would tag and post about different quotations. I will give my quote, anybody will give their quotes. So as because a lot of people use social media, especially Twitter, Instagram. So when you go online, you can see that whatever we say, but we hashtag it combat hate speech. And not only that, other priority that we had, we used the media because we believe a lot of young people, as soon as they wake up, the first thing they do is take their phones, hold their phones. So it's a very tricky generation, which I'm in, funny enough. So what we do, so we know that young people really are into games, like video games. So what we did, we developed, we partnered with GIZ and several stakeholders to develop a game called Mission 55. So that game, as a young person who is addicted to social media, I can say it's a peace tool because it educates people about conflict management, peace building, Y4P, and in general about everything. So other priorities that we give about us, what we do, we always hold a series of dialogues online on Twitter space, whereby we bring about, for example, me as an AM, I represent 14 African countries. I know for a fact to reach each one in a mandate of 2 years is not easy. So I use the media space to advocate for peace through Twitter space where we hold different dialogues. We speak about continental framework, the mandate that guides us, and we speak about youth, peace, and security. Amplify youth voices and capacity them enough to know what they can do and what they should not do about peace and security, what they have, and what opportunities are representing as AFs. And that we hold in a series of every regions, we always arrange in a schedule. So like mine happened in around August, where around more than I can say 300 young people joined online and they were able to share their perspectives, share their views. To add on that as well, we were able to attend the Aspen Forum, whereby before attending the forum, we can't go there and speak about young people without them giving us what they're saying. It's the same thing we always advocate and always say, don't be in a room talking about youth issues and on the table there's no any young person. Nobody can speak better than the young person themselves. So what we did, we held an online consultation where we included our young people. We gave them an opportunity to air out their views about climate change, the next to peace and security and everything. And we collected the recommendations and we brought up presentation to it in the Aspen Forum, whereby we're grateful enough in the COP27, it was presented in the output documents. So having all that as a media tool is what the African Union has actually been prioritizing on. We've done a lot of work, but I would just have to try to save time and say a little bit. And you asked about the challenges, right? Yeah. I'll give a little bit on how to solve the challenges. So I'll be really honest with you. Nobody can control anybody's fingers when it comes to pressing on social media. So yes, you can advocate as much as you want, but there's no one formula to sort in this issue of media being an issue instead of being a peace tool, but it being an altering issue of peace security. But what we believe in the AU is that giving up is not an option for today, for tomorrow, and for the future. We'll keep on combating this through trainings, capacity buildings, workshops, advocating, hashtagging, Twitter places as much as we can, because if we don't do it now, who will do it? Nobody will come and do it. We are the current generations. As my fellow said, youth are now the future. I don't like the quote that says we are the future. No, we are the future. It's happening right now in our eyes. So that's the challenge. That's the only way we can solve it, is realizing that we are the current and we take advantage as much as we can. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Diana. And I think moving on to Sade, we have the opportunity to hear from the other side, from a platform who is providing young people this voice, but also is potentially the space where some of these negative interactions are happening. And so I want to give the floor to you, Sade, to talk a bit more in-depthly about some of the initiatives that we mentioned that Meta is doing currently to combat some of the offline conflicts that are moving on to digital platforms.
Sure. So at Meta, we do take our responsibility quite seriously about our platforms, and we learn from different stakeholders over time some of the trends that we're seeing on the continent, specifically around conflict, times of civil wars or sometimes around elections and those sorts of things. We have a team of experts that are specifically dedicated to working on issues related to security. And we have 40,000 of those experts, and many of them are in Africa. We work with what we call trusted partners who help us really to understand country context and language, and to understand, what information is being put out there, whether it's accurate or not, how it's being disseminated, what do certain innuendos mean, and that sort of thing. And our trusted partners, in fact, we just finished having a training with many of them last week, and they really help us. We recognize as a company that we don't always have all the answers, but we know how to bring people together that do have all the answers to the very local specific issues that are arising in some of these communities. Apart from relying on our experts that either both work for Meta or are outside experts, we are engaged in a number of initiatives that are specifically designed to open up dialogue around some of the issues that we've mentioned here today, harmful content, issues around conflicts and destabilization. I think earlier when I was describing some of the work we did, I said we were working with Search for Common Good. I think it's because I think we were doing so much good, but no, I want to correct that, Search for Common Ground. So you heard about the project that we have, the Uthabiti Africa project, which was conducted in East Africa, Francophone Africa, and Anglophone West Africa, where we were able to partner with 60 CSOs on that project, just to help the dialogue around these sort of issues. And what we believe is that when we're more proactive, we'll be able to combat these issues. We have a program called My Digital World, which is also focused on training folks around harmful content on our platforms. And we have trained folks, specifically 4.7 million individuals through that program. And what we've found is that governments are now asking us, can you bring this? Can we partner with you in our particular country so that we are not viewed as a government as being heavy-handed, trying to stop, people's expression, but more so as a collaborator and an educator of what is both lawful but also safe use of these platforms. In addition, we're really keen on empowering youth, and youth being part of that conversation. As Diana mentioned, they're a large portion of the folks who are using our platforms. And so it's extremely important for them to be a part of the conversation. We have a program that a lot of our colleagues, who I should mention, I have colleagues in the room and online who are part of our Dangerous Organizations and Individuals team, and they're focused on helping these different communities on a grassroots level, very recently working across SSA. And one of the programs that they have been working on is called Sariti Jami. And it's a program that for SSA has been implemented in Cameroon and Ethiopia. And one thing that I found so fascinating about this is that it focuses on storytelling and using narratives. We talked about that before, giving people an opportunity to be able to have a safe space to express themselves about the situations that they're going through. And that really helps them be able to navigate the kind of conversations that they'll then be taking online. So in Cameroon, we worked with Reach Out Cameroon and Local Youth Corner. And we fed into what the Ministry of Social Affairs, as well as the Ministry of Health, the work that they were doing around this space. So it's really important for us to collaborate, not just with the CSOs, but also with the government entities that are trying to also ensure that their populace are trained and educated on proper use of our platforms. In Ethiopia, we partnered with Initiative Africa and Inspired Ethiopian Youth Association. And again, that's another place where youth were at the forefront of that conversation. We believe that if we're going to navigate how our platforms can be used, we need to know what people are talking about on our platforms. And so these kind of spaces really enable that. One of the things that Diana mentioned, which I thought was fabulous, was this game tool. At Meta, we're very focused on how do you use new digital technology to solve real world issues. And so recently, we worked with the Lagos Business School. They have a virtual human computer interaction lab, and we are working with them to develop games that build empathy in people. And a lot of times these conflicts that we see are around discrimination or ethnical divides and those sort of things. And this HCI lab is focused on how can you use VR to be able to combat some of those challenging or negative ideologies that then lead to harmful dialogues and then sometimes violence. Through those types of efforts, brainstorming how we can use our expertise in the digital space to come up with these sort of innovative solutions, it is a big priority for us. Lastly, I just want to mention that I think you heard me discuss before about our experts, and we are really, really big on transparency. And so we have put out our community standards enforcement report, which really will outline, and it does, we put it out and folks dissect it and ask questions about it. It outlines the proactive activity that we're doing to make sure that our platform remains as safe as possible. And you'll notice through that report that we take every step possible to be proactive based on our community standards, which we have come up with definitions and outlined what it means to use our platforms in a way that really promotes community and does not lead to harm. And you'll see through that report that we've been very active in ensuring that we are at the forefront of whenever there's something going on our platform, there's harmful content, that we either through the technology tools that we've built or human reviewers are really taking care of that, either by taking down content, by establishing better relationships with certain organizations, that sort of thing. So I encourage you, if you haven't had a chance to take a look at that, we're pretty transparent, and you can check that out online as well.
Thank you very much. Kind of going off of this idea of storytelling and the power of individual actors in this, I want to ask Habibou, from your experience over the past year doing consultations with bloggers and influencers, what are the kinds of things you're hearing from people in this space about the ways that governments, USG, CSOs can be supporting them So from the people who are most impacted by it, from individual activists or social media users.
Okay, thank you again, Amanda. I think one of the finding is that it is a big issue, and that's need to involve everyone, and that's need specifically those who are using these digital tools also, specifically young people. She talked already about the fact that it's the young people that are the most people that are using this. So to involve them in terms of building tools and building also spaces to discuss these challenges. When I give an example, in Mali, for example, there is the case of an initiative called Tabalin Kunka, that is like a local tambo that's created a Facebook page in which they can check fake informations and share it also to update people that this is fake news, here is what's happened already. So this is the kind of thing that internet user themselves can do. And there is people that want to do this kind of thing, that want to be part of this kind of initiative. Maybe one other point that I want to add also is, even if there is the will within communities to do this kind of thing, it is important also to support governments, for example, to take best laws, for example, to make information more accessible and more free. This is something also that's at the government level that can help these digital users, as well as that can help also community to access to good information, and to have like a kind of offer of best information on the other hand, if the misinformation is free.
Thank you. And then kind of moving on from that last point about the role of governments, I want to kind of zoom out even further to talk about the African Union and broader regional or transnational efforts to combat some of the issues that we've talked about. Conflicts are not always bound to regional boundaries, or country boundaries. So I wanted to give the floor to you, Diana, to talk about the ways digital peace building is offering us an opportunity to combat some transnational conflict issues. And also perhaps that's coming with challenges, but the ways that regional bodies and governments can work together to combat these issues.
Thank you for that question. I was actually waiting for it. I would start with one thing as a youth representative. When we speak about media, we speak about young people. And why do I say young people? Because the majority uses the young people, the majority of them. And on going to solve any issue regarding peace and security, youth inclusion is really important. Because I was in Kenya, and I say this and I'll say this again, 90% of soldiers are young people. If the same energy you put to recruit these young people because they are unemployed, they're idle, they're desperate, they're frustrated about life, it's the same energy we problem solvers should use to do the same. Let's balance the equation. It's mathematical. It's that easy. Let's not let the people who create the problem for peace issues have more energy than us. Solution is easy. The same energy reflected back. Youth inclusion is the key to solving these issues, because looking back, even in time, back in the days, I was speaking to one of the very good coordinators of mine, and he told me, Diana, back in the time, we couldn't create trouble. If you're not create trouble, you had to write a letter. Until you reach to the trouble area, you're already tired of waiting for the response. But this time, you guys, everything is on your hands. Even on opportunities, you have it on your hands. I became an AI because I saw an advert on Google. That's media. So things are literally on our eyes, but the only way to solve them and the only way to deal with them is first to consider youth inclusion. That's the highest key point I can add on that. And coming from the youth representation, I would also add on how we should also actually let me make it easier. Since I have somebody from Meta here, and Facebook is full of youth posting pictures and doing all that, but also it's one of the more major place where people do a lot of peace and security issues, and we are all aware of that. So among the 60 CSOs you trained, can I kindly ask as a youth ambassador to include a lot of young people among that? Can it be more in number than any other? Because when you train, even when you train just one young person, you've trained the entire world. You have solved you have healed the entire world. So I'm kindly asking from such a big platform to please make youth as your biggest priority in your initiatives, in all that you do, especially when it comes not only to East Africa, in general, in the entire world. Peace and security is not just an issue in Africa only, it's an issue in the entire world. So kindly include, make youth the priority. This is just a simple request from the youth ambassador from the African Union. Taking advantage of the table now that I have the space.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, please.
Youth are a priority
Yes.
in those programs. In fact, and I don't have the exact numbers. I'll see if I can get them before the end of the session. But youth have been a part of those of the 60 CSOs, and specifically, we've been intentional about targeting youth organizations, and some of the organizations that we work with, including with Habibou, Search for Common Ground is very keen on involving youth as well. So they've been very intentional of including them in some of those programs as well. But rest assured, we get it, that youth are vital, not just because of the role they play on platforms, but recognizing that that's the fastest growing population on the continent. Yeah. So that means that everything that we're doing from a business standpoint, economic standpoint, social impact, all of those things have to be spearheaded, have to have youth in the leadership because they're the largest population. Yeah. So I'm completely in agreement with you.
Yes, because one, I believe it's that whoever controls the media controls the world. So if young people are the leading majority, then let's control the world together in a better place. Other than that, I would also say those who are given spaces, like me, for example, I get to access to rooms that young people, not all of them can access them. So I took advantage and requested that. It's the same thing I would ask anybody who gets an opportunity to enter in the rooms of policy spaces, to ask policymakers to really include young people in a lot of things. Even when you're developing these peace and security tools, whether in continental-wise or worldwide, make sure a young person is part of it. Because again, I repeat, nobody does it better than a young person. Nobody. They're the ones, they're really creative. They're very smart. We see a lot of TikToks going around and you're like, how did this person do it? That's a young person. That's a young mind driving around. So if we take advantage of the youth in general, and when I speak about the youth, somebody said, what's the age limit? I don't know if I get 40, I'm still a young person. I still believe in youth. So when we speak about the youth, we mean youth in general, youth inclusion, regardless of anything. I don't care about how you are, how you look, whatever it is, but so long as you're a youth, for me, you really should play a part in all that policy space area. So that's all I can say as a solution to all the problems that are happening because of media. And I have nothing to add. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think for our final question before we move into the Q&A, I kind of want to build off of all the recommendations that we've heard about including youth, and then kind of twist it a little to ask Meta what you need as a business investing in Africa, and what tools you need from other governments or out of the governments that are here at ALS, so that you can create the safest platforms and the best spaces for youth to engage and build peace in their communities.
Awesome. I will take that question up in a minute, but my team is so fabulous that they already came back with numbers of youth engagement. So for the Uthabiti project, it was 30% of the CSOs that were trained that were youth. And then for the Sareti project, Sareta Jami project that I mentioned, of the projects in the trainings in SSA, 3 of the 4 of them were youth focused. So I meant it that we're really keen on having youth involved in these. And earlier I did want to mention that we have this project called No False News Zone that we have put out in a number of countries in Africa. And it's a comic book that we've used to help people understand what false news is. And it's been widely successful as far as people really wanting to disseminate the information that we provided there. But we worked with a number of organizations and we are also sharing it with governments because we do recognize that false news is one of the biggest challenges on our platform in Africa, on our platforms in Africa right now. People are very quick to share without recognizing. And of course, you've seen some of our fact checking operations on Facebook and Instagram, where you'll get a pop-up or a notification about the authenticity of a particular claim or an article. So those are things that are ongoing. As far as what we as a business need, for us, we're about co-creation. And what do I mean about that? On the continent, when you look at the programs or the new technologies that we are currently working on, let's talk about the metaverse, one of our biggest efforts right now. We have some extremely talented individuals, both young and old, on the continent who are creators. We have people who are into computer science, people are master storytellers, folks who are on the music scene that's now gone global. And it is a priority for us as Meta that we create an atmosphere of engagement. So we're not about, okay, we're bringing this US company to African countries and we're sharing what we've come up with. It's more about what are the resources that currently exist and what opportunities can we provide to people who are already doing really brilliant work on the ground, but just maybe need funds or need to improve their skill set just a little bit. And so we have things like our XR fund, where we've partnered with a number of youth, but also older folks who are involved in new technology development. That is going to be key for ensuring that whenever new platforms or new technologies come out, that Africans are not left behind, and that it's really designed in a way that is specifically unique and locally contextualized for not just our consumption as Africans, but also for us to be the developers. So that's one thing. And on that same vein, we've noticed that there are not as many reporting mechanisms that are coming out of countries within Africa. So that is one thing that we do we need a little bit of help with, is better reporting mechanisms and also understanding who points of contacts are. Sometimes you're working with a number of agencies who are doing so many different things, and it's hard to keep track of, who is the actual contact that we should be working with. What are the parameters around the scope of their area of expertise, and what does it look like for them to be partners with us when we are dealing with issues that arise from their populace on the continent. Lastly, I would say more collaboration with partners, CSOs. you know, we're open to those collaborations, those partnerships. And so to the extent that there are folks who are engaged in some of the activities that we've discussed today or have an interest in that, we want to collaborate. We don't have staff in every single locality, in every single country, but we know that if we partner with a CSO that has reach, that goes a long way to helping us. And we engage with policy experts on policy development. So we appreciate the search for common good and common ground. I keep saying good today. Search for common ground in the work that we've done together on the policy development side. And whenever there's those consultations for policy development, we hope that we can see more organizations be a part of that dialogue in submitting comments or meeting with governments to help shape policy in a way that is focused on, protecting individuals' rights to expression and privacy and protecting their data, but also balancing that with the need to promote lawfulness and safe and responsible use of our platforms.
All right, thank you very much. I would like to now open the floor to questions in the room. I think my colleague Philip is available to give you a mic. So I see here in the front row.
Thank you. My name is Lara Konowi. I am with Nigerian American Public Affairs Committee. We're also advocates on the space, and you're talking about collaboration. We're ready, we're open. However, my question to you is, we're talking about inclusion. People with disability, especially mental health, is on the increase, and they also classified under that. People with disability are not included in terms of user-friendly programming. They want to hang out on Facebook, and I would like to see a special commitment towards that. I like the idea of the storybook or even the cartoon book or whatever something you mentioned, to kind of break it down for them, because that is where they are bullied.
Yeah.
And and it would be very sad in this century that they are disenfranchised because they are already in a very bad demographics. So I'd like to see you guys being a frontliner in this space to dedicate a special resource to people with disability. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Representative Carol Kazim, and more so like a statement, but also a question. And for our beautiful young lady, our ambassador here, she made a great point about including the young people and myself even being young. One of the things that I feel like would help make the process easier, especially we're talking about on the meta side, is actually unifying Africa just all across. I think that will make the process much easier. And I would like to know exactly how do you guys plan on doing that, and if that's already been in a transition, because I hear it, but I don't really see that bridging the gap really closing in. And I think having, our wonderful ambassadors here, I think it's really great to kind of start that opportunity. So I would love to know how's that even being on the start, like are you guys actually including them, like how's that going on?
Maybe we can take a few questions and then we can answer.
My name is Mohammed Kunta. I'm the African Union Youth Ambassador for Peace for the region of West Africa. This is just a reflection. In the previous panel, there was a reflection around the age bracket of youth. So I'm just asking, you said you've had a lot of training for young people. It's just a concern that we're seeing a lot of young people or children per se, age 14 to 15. We now have like age 8, 9, 12 using social media. So for me, I think I just have a bit of concern if there is a training so far for children that is like below the age of youth.
One more, is that what? Okay, yeah, so I'll turn it over to you to answer some of the more specific to meta questions, and then we can talk about unifying youth across the continent, and engaging with young people, digital literacy programs. What is that?
Thank you. I'll start with the question for, I forget your name, but you're from NAPAC, right?
Yes, yes,
What's your name, please?
Madam Lara Kunobi.
Madam Lara. I've done some work in my personal capacity with NAPAC. So we could talk about that later. With some folks in Detroit, I think you might know who I'm talking about. So, yeah, And so it's a really good question that you asked. Disability and inclusion for folks with disabilities, and we call it accessibility at Meta. We have people who are significantly dedicated to that. Just last week, actually, there was an accessibility day that we participated in, and we highlighted some of the programs that we've done around that. So we have access tools on our platforms already that are geared towards people being able to use our platforms who have specific types of disabilities, maybe hearing or a visual impairment or those sort of issues. But I get what you're saying about bullying and disenfranchisement. And so apart from making our platforms more accessible using those types of tools, there's also a lot of education that has to be done of folks who aren't in those categories of having one disability or another. A lot of times when we look at marginalized groups, we try to say, well, you tell me what what we need. But a lot of times the onus is on everybody else who's not part of that group. To be part of the solution and encouraging others around them to not be making the situation worse. Yes, perpetuating that. And so, like I said, we do have folks who are focused on this specifically. Would love to connect with you and see the kind of work that you're doing specifically that may be opportunities for collaboration, but also just to know that that the onus really is on all of us when it comes to when we see people treating folks in that demographic in a harmful or bad way, that we are part of the solution to combating that. So thank you for that question. Then the question from Representative Kazim, you're talking about unifying Africa. I just
all the countries across Africa, but among the young individuals like stated, being able to really start bridging that gap between, just from speaking from a young perspective as well, that is where a lot of the gap is.
So I think that from our perspective, we're in a position where we want to promote efforts that are ongoing in that kind of space. So I'm not sure that, we could say we're going to be the ones that unify all of Africa. But what we do is participate in organizations and events that are specifically like that. So you'll see us participate in AU deliberations where the public is available to participate. You'll see us participate in very cross-regional activities. For instance, you'll see Africa Tech or AfricaCom. I participated in that just a few weeks ago. It was in Cape Town, and folks literally from all across Africa were there and were participating. And we had a dialogue and a session that we sponsored that was focused on developing the next generation of tech on the continent. And so we participate in that kind of capacity. I would be interested in hearing from our AU rep here, what kind of efforts they have to unify Africa countries and see where we can plug into that.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes.
Sorry, not the stuff. I think one of the things that you said as far as like that key in the dialogue, I think it would be great that if you are actually attending these events, just like now you're here, being able to like swap contact information and have like a follow-up where Meta actually had meetings and sessions ongoing with them, so you guys can actually build that and bridge that gap and make it bigger. I think, in my opinion, it's just my opinion. I think that would be a start, just to be able to do it. Not you guys more so unifying it, but it's still a stepping stone just to get that going.
Absolutely.
And then I would love to hear.
And we do try to do that whenever we do participate in these type of programs. We do follow-ups. We will participate and set up webinars or roundtables where we follow up on those conversations. And people here today can follow up with me, and I'm interested in meeting you all and exchanging contact information. The last question was around age and use of our platforms, and that was your name, Mohammed, I think. You're from AU, you're a youth ambassador. Thank you for that question. We actually have an age requirement for use of our platforms. So you're supposed to be at least 13 years old. So to be able to use Facebook or Instagram, and we have mechanisms that we use to try to detect the age of individuals, certain questions that have to be asked, trends in usage, that sort of thing. There are some countries where the age is even higher than 13 based on the specific laws in those countries. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that there's an opportunity to report. So if you see someone using our platforms who are under the age requirements, you can actually report that. And that can be reviewed by our content reviewers. It's really important that we promote safe use of our platforms. And I should point out that the experience for young people on our platforms is very different than the experience for older folks. So what they see on Facebook and Instagram doesn't look like what adults see. So there's been a lot of work that went into creating Facebook and Instagram that is more suitable for that age demographic. And we've developed technology that allows for us to estimate the age of people. And we train the technology to use multiple signals in that regard. Apart from being able to, first of all, have an age requirement, but then also be able to detect and allowing people to be able to report. I think the point you made about including younger people into some of those trainings is a very valid point. I think most of the programs that we have that are geared towards youth do tend to be like high school and college demographic of youth, but I think that that's a significant opportunity. We have some programs around digital literacy that's geared towards parents. And I've seen in a few of our outreaches around My Digital World that I mentioned earlier, and a few of our other programs where we specifically guide parents on how to help their children navigate social media usage, that sort of thing. For our Africa Public Policy team, we have a group of folks that are part of our youth, what we call our youth cluster, and they're currently developing their programming for next year. And so I would love to take this back as a genuine concern about underage youth, that demographic that's not supposed to be using our platforms, and how we can help with that. It's a very valid concern, and it's prime time because we're in our planning to try to include that particular concern.
Thank you, and we'll give the floor to Diana, and then perhaps finish off with Habibou on any closing thoughts.
I'd like to comment on how a young person is literally standing up to, I can say, lobby for me and my role in order to be able to get to partner and collaborate with Meta. That's really, really impressive. It's what I say, leadership is for everybody. I'm just a shadow, but this is your chair, and I like that. And so coming back to representation, a lot of young people who I represent, I would highly comment that not all of them have social media. they're at the grassroots level and they're the most affected by peace and security issues. They wake up, there's a certain group of people who wake up every day. They don't even know what's happening with those leaders in power, what they decide on, but they're the most affected by the decision made at the top. And how to reach those kind of groups, I mean, I can say marginalized people, is through us as youth ambassadors. Because I represent, for example, maybe Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda. So I feel like through partnership with like Meta, I'm at a better position to go to the grassroots level and know how to communicate with them more, since I'm their fellow youth and understand what they need, what they should be educated on. And that's why coming back to the point where you say, how do we bridge the gap? When you speak about unifying, it's a very big challenge because not everybody has an iPhone, Samsung, or whatever. Not everybody has access to social media, Facebook, Instagram. Not everybody knows about peace and security, but yet they're very affected by peace and security. So we, the Y4P team, created AS to be the bridge between those kind of people and the policy space people, the stakeholders like you guys, so as you can take advantage of us. That's what I can say. Use us as representatives to be like, hey, Diana, I want to partner with you in initiative A, B, and C to reach people who I cannot reach to. And that's going to be a great point. Because when we speak about Agenda 2063, Aspiration 4, which is a peaceful and secure Africa, that includes everybody. Whether you have an iPhone or not, whether you have a Samsung, whether you have, it includes everybody. And we cannot attain a peaceful and secure Africa without that inclusion. So I just want to add up that partnership and collaboration is really important. Now that you're here and how she spoke about it, the only way to bridge the gap, I am the bridge and I'm here as a youth ambassador. So peace and collaboration is one of the most important, I can say.
Absolutely.
And then,
We just make a comment.
yeah.
Okay. So I know that the question was directly answered. But the comment I want to add is also like connecting youth around the world and specifically around Africa need also to give them a space to amplify their voice, to give them a possibility to reach to decision makers, to reach to companies like Meta, to reach between them. So it's not something that come automatically, but that's need really a hard work that's bring it to the top level of connectivity. And just to share, that's like the youth perspective also is like one strategic pillar for search for common ground. As you know, we have like more than 50 office around the world, and the youth inclusion is one of our strategic goals, as well as also the digital peace building. So it is like a kind of two pillars that we met together, and specifically in kind of example in Mali, we create what we have a project what we call Youth Talk, that is really a space to connect youth with all these stakeholders I talk about, including African Union specifically.
All right, we're running quite low on time, but I think we can take one or two more questions. Okay. Please keep them brief.
Yes, it's very brief. Thank you very much. My name is Cleia. I work for the African Union Commission, and I have a question for the panelists from Meta. I'm just thinking, I know you have an Africa office or Africa focused office, probably based in London. And my question is, when engaging the different institutions on the continent in Africa, have you ever or have you tried to engage the African Union by establishing some sort of partnership agreement or seeing how you can work with the institutions and access not only member states, because one of the things that African Union has is really convening power. So you talked about unity and having like a unified voice. So it's one of the places where we actually can develop a common position on specific issues. We have one on climate change and other things that are quite important. In addition to that, we also have access to a lot of academics, like academia, as well as civil society and others. So I think that's just to find out, just out of curiosity, if this has something that has been done before, tried before, and if not, we're talking to the right people.
I think one more question, and then also I think some of our panelists will be happy to answer questions like individually.
Hi, my name is Tanya Nyati. I'm from Zimbabwe. I'm not in this political space, but I'm part of NAPAC. Yeah, and I'm also like a medical writer for a pharmaceutical company. So my question is directed to you, Sade. I really want to understand the take that Meta is taking on free speech, because this is very important, knowing what's going on right now with Twitter. The history of free speech has always been a relationship between the government and citizens. And now that there's these huge platforms of social media that are now mediators. And how are you guys controlling biases, especially when it comes to like exerting involuntary filters and that's censorship towards individuals. At the same time, you have to sort of like balance hate speech and all that stuff. So it's a very tight space between mitigating that, and I want to understand what Facebook is doing, because obviously like you're working with the government and you're also for the people, but like people have things to say, and how do you determine what's free speech and what's?
Excuse me. Just 1 point.
Sorry, we're running quite low on
I
time.
will be very short. No problem.
I think we should stick with what we have, but you're welcome to come up afterwards, the panelists finish, and ask your question, just so we can conclude, not too over time.
You know why I'm insisting? It's just because what you're doing today, we have been doing that for 15 or 20 years here in the United States. My question is, if this new generation is there to do that, when does the United States will bring peace in Africa? Talking especially for the DR Congo. We have been here, we're getting all together. I'm talking, my brother, you see, we have been doing that. We are young like you. Now today you're taking over. My concern is, what does the means, the financial, the peace that the United States can bring in Congo, and be like Asians are putting 60 or 70% car in the road of the United States, just because they're taking, instead of the war, they're doing business. I'm sorry if I did this, but just to let you know that you are the second or the third generation to do that. I just want you to see during your lifetime the peace in Africa. Thank you.
So I guess I can take some of the questions and try to remember. I don't think that last question, I'm not US government, so that's not for me. But the question, is it clear? Clear, we actually have offices in Africa. So we do not do business in Africa from afar. We have public policy folks who are on the ground in the continent. Specifically, we have an office in Johannesburg, and we have an office in Lagos. Outside of those, we do have people who work also in Kenya as well. And so it's really important for us to establish relationships on the continent. And if you look at my team, I'm based here in Washington, D.C., because that's where I've always lived, but I'm moving to our Lagos office. And most of us who are working, in fact, all of us, I just have to think real quick, who are working on Africa policy issues are all either born in Africa or first generation immigrants, or sons and daughters of first generation immigrants. So it's been extremely important for us to have that local context and to understand cultural dynamics on the continent firsthand. That's number one. As far as collaborating with the AU, we have actually done quite a bit of collaboration with the AU. We have folks who are working on issues around some of the topics we're talking about now, like false news on our platforms, harmful content like hate speech, that sort of thing. but we're also working on business generation, like how do we help train people on how to use our platforms for business development. We've done programs specifically utilizing the AU for that. We also are working with the AU whenever we have projects that span multiple jurisdictions. For instance, we've been in to talk with the AU and collaborating our 2 Africa subsea cable project that is going to be landing in 33 African countries. The AU is very aware and has been a part of that dialogue. We have been working with the AU on issues around harmonization of specific policies where it can promote investment when companies like Meta and others can see a policy that is similar, if not the same, across multiple jurisdictions. The AU has been a strong proponent of that. I look forward to further collaborations with the AU, especially when it comes to youth involvement and engagement as well. I do know that folks, especially I remember seeing recently on our Eastern Horn of Africa policy team have engaged quite a bit on that space. So there may be some other colleagues of yours who they're talking to, but we'd love to continue that dialogue and to be able to collaborate even more. And some of the regional or governing bodies like ECOWAS and those sort, we've also been involved with those. So I hope that helps answer that question. And then don't tell me, Tanya, from NAPAC as well. And this issue of freedom of speech is very, very dear to us. We actually have been really, really intentional about trying to step away from biases. And the way we've been able to do that, and hopefully we'll continue to do it even better, is that when we're developing our standards and our definitions of what would be considered, terrorist talk or harmful, other harmful or dangerous organizations or individuals and their rhetoric, we've developed all of those standards and definitions from a place of collaboration with experts. And so we go out of our way to make sure that we have external individuals who feed into our building of those definitions, so that it's not where we only look to what governments have to say or government's decision on that type of content. Whenever we get requests around specific content on our platforms, we have folks who review that. It's not, automatic that every single report that we're given or that someone checks the box, if you're on Facebook and someone can report a content, it's not automatic. There are actual reviewers who go out of their way to ensure that the post that's under review either does or does not meet our community standards. And at the core of why we're specifically focused on expression is because we believe that people's rights are valuable. And that's why we've done, I think, a good job of being transparent. So whenever we have takedowns or the like, we actually report on it. So you can go today and look at our community standards enforcement report and see the number of actions that we've taken on our platform. And I think that demonstrates, or at least can give you an idea of some of the trends on the continent around how we enforce. The last thing I'll leave you with is that we all know here that there are going to be instances where there are specific interests that that entities on the continent want to promote, and we find it to be our responsibility to not be, I think you used the term, mediator or, or censorship. So we don't, that's not our job. That's why we try so hard to make it as clear as possible what our standards are.
Algorithms are pushing like people who want to speak out on issues of colonization and all this stuff. I'm not showing those people. It's because you guys are censoring it.
So we can have a conversation. I would love to take this conversation directly with you and understand specifically, examples of what you're referring to. I will say that it is a personal, and for our team, who are Africans, we're very, very, very keen to ensure that African voices are not diminished. It is extremely important to us. And so that's why we try so hard to stick to a specific standard that is applicable across the board. But I'm happy to discuss with you, what any instances that you are talking about in particular, to find out, what is going on in those cases.
And with that, I think we'll close the session. Thank you very much for attending and engaging with us on this. If you would like to continue the conversation, we're using the hashtags #Youth for Peace and #African Leaders Summit. And also to learn more about Search for Common Ground, you can visit our website or follow us on our social media at Twitter at SFCG. So yes, thank you very much for engaging with us.
Thank you.